Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, as you all filter in. Welcome to the Lutherans Restoring Creation regular connections call time, where I'm happy to say that we have many more people joining us today. We have a special guest, and I also just wanted to thank all of the partners that we're working with that gathered so many people together today. As people get settled, I invite you to add into the chat where you're coming in from, especially any background of what faith you're coming in from, whose land that you're on, anything else you'd like to share, please do that in the chat. As we open, I am going to share with you from Lutherans Restoring Creation. By the way, I'm Phoebe Morad. I don't know if I mentioned that. And I am on land that the Massachusetts people continue to care for. And I'm going to open this evening with our land acknowledgement that has a little bit more to do with knowledge acknowledgement as well. As we live, work, and worship in the land that is now called the United States, Lutherans Restoring Creation recognizes that we do so on land that was stolen from Indigenous people. As we are called to restore creation, we are also called to restore right relationship with one another. As we join in this holy vocation of loving our neighbor, we honor all our Indigenous siblings who have been companions of the land, waters, and beings of Turtle Island since time immemorial. We charge our community to learn about the original and continuous stewards of the land upon which we exist. We lament legacies of violence, cultural genocide, and displacement of Indigenous communities, committing ourselves to hearing and speaking the truth of that history and its ongoing effects. I welcome you all here this evening or afternoon or whenever in the future you're able to watch this. And I hope it's an ongoing resource for your communities. I am grateful. First off, I'm going to share my screen really quickly to give you a little bit of a sense as to all the different peoples that are gathered today and making this happen. So let me share. Okay. I just wanted to highlight the fact that thanks to Interfaith Power and Light, and especially all the people in the background helping make sure this works. Usually I'm trying to do everything, and now there's a team here of people helping. Thank you, Interfaith Power and Light. And I wanted to highlight the fact that if you are not part of a local Interfaith Power and Light yet, please make sure that you go to their website and find your local affiliate. And if you don't have one yet, then maybe you should start one. And I also wanted to just highlight the idea that we do have Common Ground is the name of, let me see, here we go. Common Ground is what's coming up. It seems like a far off time in April. This is a perfect segue. You're just leading up to this Faith and Climate Action Week. Please make sure you find out more information about that. In fact, if Sarah, would you like to say anything about it? You certainly can, now that we have this on the screen.
Yeah, sure. I would love to. My name's Sarah Paulos. I'm the program director for Interfaith Power and Light. We're really happy to be partnering today with Phoebe and Naomi to bring this conversation to you. And especially because this year, every year, Faith Climate Action Week is Interfaith Power and Light's premier week of climate action. We encourage congregations to take action through sermons, worship services, educational events, and hands-on action to show that people of faith are leading the way to heal our climate. So it's a 10-day period of activities in celebration around Earth Day. And our theme is different every year. And this year, our theme is Common Ground, cultivating connections between our faith, our food, and our climate. And we'll examine our responsibility to use agricultural practices that safeguard our sacred earth and how our faiths call us to respond with just solutions for all. And so I think that there's a bit of an overlap between the National Wildlife Federation Sacred Grounds program and also the theme this year for Faith Climate Action Week, Common Ground. So we'll learn how to protect the earth through plants and how we grow plants. And I just wanted to point out that the dates are April 19th through the 28th. That's around Earth Day. And we encourage people to plan ahead. A lot of congregational organizers are planning their Earth Day plans now. And so that's why we have this organizer kit available that is on the page that Phoebe is showing you. So yes, and I see the button for purchase seed kits here. Yeah, we also sell seeds, very special seeds around Faith Climate Action Week for those of you who want to grow a vegetable garden. It's a pizza garden seed kit. Anyway.
I picture pizzas popping out of the ground, by the way. I love that.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is. You grow the food and you take it in the kitchen and then you make your pizza. But I also wanted to mention the film that we are going to do this year for Faith Climate Action Week. It's called Common Ground, and it's the sequel to the film Kiss the Ground, if you hadn't seen that before. It's an excellent film, and IPL has secured free screening rights for congregations to show the film to your congregation and to your community. So we'll be putting information about that film on our website and encourage you to consider hosting a screening of the film Common Ground during Faith Climate Action Week in April. And happy to answer questions. My email is programs with an S at interfaithpowerandlight.org, all one word. I'll put it
Will
in
you
the
put that in the chat too? Great.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, Phoebe.
Thank you, Sarah. And speaking of films, I'll use that as a segue to mention the fact that our next Connections call, we are Lutherans Restoring Creation, but we welcome all to join us, especially to watch this film on your own time. We're going to be, if you register for this event, which I'll also put in the link, next February 27th, next month, our connection call, we get to speak with the filmmaker of this particular film, which really highlights the intersection between things like the food bill, the farming bill, and environmental action across the globe. And basically how it's a both and, that yes, we need to reduce our fossil fuel usage and we need to think about how we cover our planet and how the planet heals us. So I really highly encourage you, even if you can't come to the time that we speak with the filmmaker, which will be fun, please register for this event because you'll be able to have a free screening link sent to you. We do encourage you to watch it with your church community. And the idea is that this will be a great way to start conversations that maybe will lead to things like building sacred grounds, as we will hear from in a moment from Naomi. So I wanted to highlight that as well and invite you all. And then finally, too, I also want to invite you to the multi-faith collaboration from One Home, One Future. Want to make sure you know that there are people of all faiths all across the globe doing this work, but especially with One Home, One Future, if you wanted to join and just know where a lot of these resources live all together. And we're trying to grow more of a movement, as I like to say, just try to picture this as a big ampliphone, that we all know that we're doing this work in creation care in our own little faith circles. Let's make sure that we make it as loud as possible and make some joyful noise. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over, first kind of show off their website a little bit, but I am so thankful to Naomi Edelson when asked if they might be able to come and share a little bit about the Sacred Grounds Project. There was no hesitation. She's really eager to share what some of the great stories that have already happened out there and hope to grow even more. Thank you so much, Naomi, for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you. I am so thrilled to be here. Really, I'm so happy. I'm Naomi Edelson. I work for the National Wildlife Federation, and I am based in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm just very, very grateful for Phoebe for suggesting this idea for the Lutherans Restoring Creation, and for Sarah and Tiffany with Interfaith Power and Light. And we're going to also hear from my local Interfaith Power and Light partner, Joelle Novi, who helped me really create this program back 10 years ago. So it's really a pleasure to be sharing this idea with you, and hope that you will join us in creating, helping people and wildlife on your congregation grounds and at your members' homes. It's so nice to see the list of people who have joined us and where you're from. That's so great. So I am actually, like I said, I'm in the Washington D.C. area, but I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and I'm a member of a Dot Shalom Reconstructionist congregation. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share my presentation. This is about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Joelle for some additions to it from her experience working on this. And then we'll open it up for some question and answers. So you'll be able to put your question and answers in the chat, and should have time for all of this. We're going to end, I think, with a little bit of some music and a little short video. Sorry, there's a little technical issue. It says I can't start screen sharing while other participants are sharing. So I think, Phoebe, you have to take that.
That was totally my fault. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I mean, this is what we all do, right? We're still mastering it.
I know. And now I'm trying to find the bar that says.
It's usually at the top. Actually, I might be able to fix it.
Oh, I found it. It's under a layer. Okay.
Okay. All right. Good. And yeah, if you're joining us, welcome. We're going to talk about sacred grounds, how you can help people and wildlife on your congregation grounds and at home. And you can put your name and what congregation you're a member of and where you live in the chat. It's great. It's really fun to see. All right.
And while you're pulling up your slides too, I'll mention that if you do have a specific question rather than a comment to add in the chat, please do just start it with the letter Q. So those of us looking at questions can see it quickly. Thank you.
Oh, good point. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. And I just want to say Sacred Grounds, which Joelle Novi actually came up with the name. So again, a shout out to my partner in Interfaith Power and Light, is about caring for creation. And it's really about planting native plants to help people and wildlife. Oops. And National Wildlife Federation has been actually doing something like this where people live and work, learn, and now worship since 1973. So we've been doing this for more than 50 years. And as I said, the idea has always been to conserve wildlife, not just in our beautiful national parks and wildlife refuges or state parks and state local lands, but really where we live, work, play, and learn, and most recently, worship. And we know, you all know this, but not everyone understands this, but all the faiths have some kind of tradition of caring for the earth. And here's a beautiful example of a church we are working with, and St. Francis of Assisi is a very strong advocate, right, for wildlife, animals, and taking care of the earth, but all different variety of faiths. Every faith has something related to this. And so Sacred Grounds, I'll say this a bunch of times, but the essence of it is this idea of planting native plants. And by doing that, we are caring for people and wildlife. And here's a picture on my synagogue with my son when we first started this project a while back. He's now 16 and playing hockey, and I don't think I could get this same picture again, but it was a sweet moment. So what is a native plant? And many of you probably know this, but many people aren't really clear what it is. So a native plant, you could really say a local or indigenous plant, is a plant that is naturally evolved in a region and thrives in that soil and weather, which makes it able to live in that setting, and where many others can also live, but this one is better able to thrive under a variety of conditions, and we'll talk more about that. This is very important in the era of climate change. And the key here is that native plants and native wildlife rely on each other for survival. So Sacred Grounds does many things. It helps create wildlife habitat. It can also help you beautify your grounds in a sustainable way. We're going to talk more about how it'll help you prepare and cope with climate change. It helps clean our rivers and streams, and it puts your faith into practice. This idea of caring for creation, it gives you a very specific way to put your faith into practice. Everybody can do this. And it can also, which is I know important to a lot of congregations, save money with low-cost landscaping. So in an era of climate change, native plants have become actually very important in a lot of Eastern and Midwestern states. It's not so much the issue in the West, but is to some extent. And because these native plants help slow the flow, where I live in the Mid-Atlantic, we're having more rain with more intensity and more frequency. And climate change, these native plants will help reduce flooding and pollution, again, helping people and wildlife. You know, we know our waters are important to all of us. It's the web of life. People rely on them. Wildlife rely on them. We need them for all kinds of reasons. They're essential. And they've begun to get cleaner. We've been taking care of them through public investment in cleaning up our rivers. But we have, as I said, this huge problem now with climate change exacerbating lots of things. You can see all the flooding that's happening in this area in Washington, D.C., and it's all going into that sewer system there, overwhelming it drastically. It's a real problem. It's flooding people's homes, and even our small creeks are getting flooded. So it's not just the big rivers where we're having lots of problems. This can show up everywhere. And this water can often, especially in a time of flooding, be polluted and create a real problem and be dangerous for people and wildlife. One of the churches that we're working with had a severe problem with flooding. You can see the water, how it comes down this embankment, and it's going to kill that tree. And you can see all the roots exposed, and the water's running right into their sanctuary. They have a real problem in this area. And it turns out that lawns are like concrete. They have shallow roots that don't hold water or pollutants, and they lead to increased what they call stormwater runoff. Just water running off during a storm. It's a technical term, but it makes sense. And it turns out again that not all, but many of our native plants have deeper roots and more widespread root system than the non-natives. Not exclusively, but many do. And that helps slow the flow. And it's very important. They slow the flow by holding the water longer, and they trap the pollutants longer, so there's less velocity and erosion going into those creeks, and not the pulsing of pollution. And you know, these creeks are our neighbors. We live in their neighborhood. And here's a picture of my family, my son and I, with Congressman Jamie Raskin, and he loves our neighborhood creek. He puts it in his office. He's my congressman. He puts a picture of it. We all really love our local creeks and rivers. They're really important places for us. And the beauty of it is that while we've had a lot of problems, they can be repaired. And here's an example of a before and after with public investment. And the wildlife can return. Fish species that were only 3 different kinds in this creek there's now like 20 different kinds. And look at all the great children who gets to enjoy them. But it turns out that native plants also are very important for, as I mentioned, creating wildlife habitat and supporting biodiversity. America's wildlife, like globally, are at risk. We have many, many species already endangered. We've lost some, and we have many more in the pipeline. Here, you know, the monarch butterfly, many of you have probably heard about how we've lost about 90% of our population. It was like the passenger pigeon. There were millions of them, but now we're down to a much, much lower number. It's shocking for something that was once this abundant and common. And also birds. We've lost so many birds. They've been tracking these data since 1970, and they've released new information every year, but we have lost huge numbers of individual birds. And our bees, many people have now sort of found out a lot about the bee crisis, and we have many of them that are threatened with extinction and are federally endangered, like this one here. And climate change is impacting all of this and exacerbating all of this. You know, sometimes people say we're having an insect apocalypse now, and that's really affecting lots of other wildlife species and all the species that eat the insects, the basis of the food web. So we know there's problems for a variety of reasons, and climate change is really exacerbating all of these. So wildlife need basically 4 things to survive. And this is when you create wildlife habitat on your property, you would add food, water, cover, and places to raise young. And so I'm going to talk about food. That's the most important one. And again, lawns are like concrete for wildlife. They're deserts. They're food deserts, really. There's no food in lawns for pollinators, birds, or others. And Dr. Doug Tallamy is an insect biologist and entomologist at the University of Delaware, and he has really created a movement with these native plants to get people to replace their lawns with native plants. And he has a book called Bringing Nature Home. It's a wonderful book, and we have partnered with him and learned a lot from him. And one of the things he likes to point out is that, people think that they're helping birds by having food, putting up bird feeders, and they're having food for wildlife. Well, it turns out that in reality, we're entertaining ourselves mostly by doing that. And the real food for wildlife is about putting out native plants that are host for the caterpillars. 96% of birds rely on caterpillars to feed their young. I mean, I'm a wildlife biologist. I've been trained. I never heard that before. It's so obvious, but anyway. So it turns out that even like the chickadee that many of us know, during the nesting season, they have a 3-week period to get their babies out of the nest. They eat up to 9,000 caterpillars. It's the protein. Any mama knows babies need protein. Dads know that too. And so, this chickadee will need up to, can you imagine 9,000 caterpillars in 3 weeks? So we could build a better bird feeder. And it turns out again that one of the things is that 90% of the insects can only eat specific plants that they have co-evolved with. So they can't usually eat the plants that are from other countries. So if you lived in Asia, you would need plants from Asia. If you live in Maryland, you need plants that are from Maryland. It's true all over the world. And if those plants are absent from our landscape, so will be the bird food they produce. And Dr. Tallamy pioneered this idea of keystone species. It turns out that he calls them keystone. I call them superfoods, like broccoli. They're superfoods. And it turns out certain plants are the superfoods for caterpillars. Like this aster is one example, but I'll show you some more. And they actually, 14% of these plants support 90% of the caterpillars. So if you want to make a difference, it actually matters. Every native plant is good for a variety of reasons, but there are super native plants. And we can restore our lawns using some of these to help produce more bird food. And here is an example of some of the data that he has shared. Native versus non-native trees. White oak, they found 233 caterpillars on one tree on one day, compared to Bradford pear, which is an introduced non-native, had 1 caterpillar. What a difference. And that's true of something that's very common, ginkgos. People love ginkgos. They're all over urban areas, not native, not host plant for caterpillars. And there's great information which are some of these super trees, super shrubs, and super herbaceous plants. Oak is like the best, but there's many trees that really can support a lot of caterpillars. And then goldenrod, asters, sunflowers are some of the more important ones that are beautiful, and they're really these super plants. So we have created a native plant finder on National Wildlife Federation's website, that information, and it tells you, you put in your zip code, and it tells you what native plants are best for caterpillars in your area. You can also search it if there's a particular butterfly you want. It shows you which trees are best. It shows you what are the moths or butterflies that'll be attracted to it. And then also, again, shares all kinds of information. So this is one way for you to learn what to plant in your yard or congregation. And so I hope you understand from this that you agree that native plants are better. And they're an oasis for people and wildlife. Look what you can create in your congregation grounds or home. It's stunning. We've been taught that all these other plants from other countries are the ones that are beautiful because that's what's available. And many of them brought over from England or Europe as like kind of that idea that that's what should look good because that's what they were used to. But we can have beautiful, beautiful, productive, thriving systems right at home and at our congregation. And if we all do this together, we can make a big difference. Every little spot adds up, and we really can make a big difference for birds, butterflies, and ourselves. So one thing, I'm going to talk about more things, but one thing that you can do right now, and one way to, the idea on the faith community of loving your neighbors and loving the stranger and loving your neighbors means loving wildlife. And Joelle will talk a little more about this at the end. But one thing you can do right now, regardless of anything else we do at home or at your congregation, is follow the National Wildlife Federation Garden for Wildlife ideas and certify. By doing that, it's just very simple online. You can certify as wildlife habitat. Now, you don't have to certify, but it gives you the steps to do and has a wealth of information of how to garden. So now that's what any individual can do. Now what I'm going to talk about is sacred grounds, and I'm going to walk through a lot of pictures quickly, not so much tons of information. So sacred grounds is about connecting faith and environmental stewardship, engaging your congregation, and then reaching beyond your congregation. Doing all of those things, you can designate yourself as a sacred ground online. We started this we had 3 congregations that started it, including my synagogue. Here's my rabbi, because this was actually his idea. So not only has Joelle contributed, but my rabbi contributed, and we're learning so much from working with so many people. And we had this eyesore area that everyone hated, this big lawn and this area that captured the stormwater. And we planted 2,500 native plants in this area. And we had 60 families come out. So here we are engaging our congregation, and it was beautiful. And we worked in the pilot, a Lutheran church in Silver Spring, in Gaithersburg. Sorry, my dogs are about to bark here. I can't control that. No one's home. So I'm going to keep talking, hopefully. So here's the Lutheran church we worked, and they did so many things to engage their congregation and their youth. And it was really wonderful. They were very creative. They came out with so many good ideas. And here's a method. We started hosting workshops and sharing information, and tons of people showed up. They were like, I want to learn how to do this. So we knew we found out quickly there was a lot of demand. And we worked with this church in DC near the other church that was flooded and put in this beautiful garden. There's Joelle Novi from, again, DMV, Interfaith Power and Light, with one of her kids. This was during the era of COVID, and we put in this beautiful garden at this pastor is very strong environmentalist, actually co-chaired IPL at one point. And so if you follow these steps, you can do that, and you can create sacred grounds wildlife habitat, and you can get a sign. We have signs that you can get. Here's the sacred grounds sign, or if you want to get your own, they're for sale, but you pay a conservation group. It's a little bit of our helping us grow our organization, but you're being an ambassador, and you're sharing it with others and showing them, this is what it means to take care of wildlife. And instead of people thinking your lawn might look messy, they see what you're really trying to do. And so now I'm going to show you kind of the Cadillac version of what we would love to be able to do all over the country, but we haven't been able to do it yet everywhere, but we're hoping to provide a scaled up opportunity. And in the Mid-Atlantic and Great Lakes, we have had grants which have allowed us to work more closely one-on-one with congregations. And that has included churches, synagogues, mosques, and others. In the DC area where I live, we have been working with over 100 congregations overall, but more intensely with 20 and now a new cohort of 6. And we have a lot of partners. Again, you can see Interfaith Power and Light. We have Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, some funders, and some great local creeks and other groups helping us. It's a real local effort, which could be replicated in any area. Here's a cohort we were working with, a synagogue and a Black church. They're within a mile of each other, and we really did a great job working together. We also worked with a mosque in this cohort. And what we've provided when we have the resources to be able to do this is an overall engagement program, a 12 to 18 month program that you can do with your congregation. And we're trying to create an online version where we might do this virtually, like a hybrid version, where we can work with you along the way to help you do that, even if we can't come to your congregation. And I think it can work. We learned a lot during the pandemic of how to do things virtually. And we have a toolkit that we're going to be releasing, which gives you all these amazing tips. And we, of course, have expertise in conservation. We share educational materials that can be adapted. And we've been giving the congregations native plants for their garden and for their members to plant at home. The congregation is a full partner. They have to have a green team. They create one. You promote and host all the events. You collect, you'll see this, you get your members to pledge to plant native plants at home along that idea of if we all do it together, we can really add up and make a difference. And you plant a congregation garden. So I'm going to show you some pictures of that. Here is a mosque we worked with. They held an inspirational why plant native plants for their members on a Saturday night. They got almost 70 people to show up. It was quite amazing. And we talk about the same things I just talked about, why native plants are part of the solution. And we have a pledge page, and we would love to be able to work with congregations who want to do this and add your congregation. People go here and there's a drop-down menu, and they can put in that they pledge under your congregation, and you can collect them all. And here's one congregation, and they had a summary of why they're doing this. And then the people who pledge to plant native plant come to your congregation, and we give away the plants. They get a starter kit of just a few plants to try it out and do it at home. And people love it. We call it Planting Hope. It's a native plant pickup day. And you'll see, here's the pastor from that garden church we showed before. He even put up on his kiosk sign, free plant giveaway. It was amazing. And one church had this line of people coming to pick up the plants. It was quite it's really fun. Look, some of the youth showed up to say, hey, we have they showed their business of planting, they're here to help you plant your plants if you want to, create jobs. We had a local county executive come and get native plants, rain or shine. And the volunteers with the congregation love it. People love it. They love to pick up the plants. They love to help. It's a great engagement opportunity. And we give plants that are small. These are little baby plugs. They're easy to plant. It's not a barrier. And it really is effective. And here's the same congregation giving away the plants. And we do it sometimes right in the building, right after a worship service. An easy place to have people pick up the plants. And here's Father Mateo, who loves it. He just thought it was the best thing. He was very, very happy to have his church doing this. We give away educational material on how to plant, where to get more information. We've done garden tours to show people what it looks like. And we have hosted how to plant native plants, how to garden with native plants, because it turns out many of these people are inexperienced. Surprisingly, they're not just all gardeners. They are so excited, this idea of caring for creation, that they have never gardened before. And so then we have the kind of the best part of all. They put in their own garden at their church. And again, people show up to help. People love to garden. And what I want to, I just have a few more slides to close. One of the key things is we're not just raising awareness and hoping people do this. We found through working with Dr. Mirala Goldsmith, a behavior change expert, that we are changing people's behavior. It's really a distinct piece of this that a lot of people haven't been able to do. They just talk about and hope for the best. But by giving people the native plants, giving them all this other information and doing it with their community, doing a garden, and then encouraging it to do it at home, it's actually, people are changing how they manage their lawns. And we found out, we have collected lots of great data to show that 88% who picked up the plants actually planted the plants and grew them. And 65% said they were likely or very likely to plant native plants within the coming year. 33% already had done more native plants, put them in. Shocking. It's amazing. And then how likely are you to plant native plants in the coming year? The very likely, and already did is, knocks your socks off. I mean, that's pretty tremendous. And when as I mentioned, we found out that people, we thought we would be reaching the gardeners and we were converting them to now be native plant gardeners. But it turns out, again, like I said, so 40% of the people had never even gardened, which is, it just shows the potential of how much we can do together to really help people and wildlife. This is the one that I like the most. And we found out people want to do more. And we are going to be testing, we got a new grant, we're going to be testing a new program called the Tree of Life, which I think is really suited for the faith community, where we're going to help people put understory gardens of spring plants that come up early before the leaves come out. They are going to be important for early spring pollinators, bees, but also it turns out a lot of these trees in our homes and congregation grounds have very compacted soil. And by putting in these gardens, we can help the water flow better, make it more porous. And also these caterpillars actually need to burrow into the ground to create their next stage. And if it's too compacted, not only can the water not get through, but the caterpillars can't get through. It's not funny, but I'm just saying, it's like, who would have known that, right? So this is very important idea that we're going to be trying out, this Tree of Life. So I'm excited to be trying that out. And we know people love their neighborhood rivers and creeks. I mean, we want them to love them even more, but there's really, it's a way we can tap into people's passions. And I like to end with this slide that I saw on a church in Delaware. I saw somebody was here from Delaware. And I think that it really speaks to what we're trying to do together. And so I'm going to stop here and say thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Joelle Novi, who will share some of her experience partnering with us on this. And then we'll open it up for question and answers. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Joelle Novi, she, her pronouns, with the Interfaith Power and Light affiliate that serves DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. We love the Sacred Grounds program, and I wanted to, you've already heard from Naomi about how it works and some of the direct impacts it has on greening grounds and greening folks' yards. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why we found it to be such a transformative and popular educational program, and why it's been such a meaningful way for congregations to engage with creation care work. There are so many elements of this beyond just there's a tangible benefit to planting these kinds of plants. They're restorative of ecosystems because this whole food web, they have a big impact, and it's, all of us have some access to to extra land where we could plant more meaningful plants. But I wanted to just reflect on some of the poetry of what we're teaching folks about our interdependence with each other and with the natural world when we do these programs. So the Native Plant Pickup Day to me is such a beautiful program because, it's incredibly popular. I've seen people get so excited about their free plants in so many different kinds of congregations, in Black churches, in Orthodox synagogues, in UCC churches. It's been just really cool to see how everyone loves the free plants. But the poetry of coming to your house of worship where you get inspiration and get guidance, and taking these little plants home with you, these life-giving plants, and planting them in your own ground where you tend to them and like help encourage and nourish them in their growth, like, to me is in addition to the concrete benefit it has, is such a beautiful teaching about what we're trying to suggest, can be like this redemptive power of our congregations to help us all, restore the world together. And one of the ways in that I found is a really powerful way of helping congregations think about why, if they are called to do this work, is to dig into their ethic of hospitality. So almost all of our congregations have a strong, and all of our faith traditions have a strong ethic of welcoming guests. And many of us have, scriptures we teach our children about the importance of welcoming guests. Every congregation I've worked with has, can talk at length about the things they have done in their own community to try to make sure that guests feel welcome in their space and in their sanctuary and congregation. So to me, this program has been an opportunity to say, what if you thought about your hospitality to non-human animals? What would it, and that the NWF definition of a welcoming space for wildlife is, food, water, places to raise young, right? Like the same things that, like, when Abraham ran out to greet those strangers who came up over the hill to visit him, he thought about, like, well, can I get you something to eat? Can I wash your feet? Can I help make you more comfortable? Like, that's really the question we're asking when we think about hospitable, to think about our ethic of hospitality expanding beyond human species. So that to me is also a way in to a transformative teaching about our role in the natural world that can follow from our participation in these programs. And the other one is about sort of seeing with new eyes, because what that native plant finder is showing when you search your zip code and see that some plants support 500 species and some plants support 3, right, is like inviting us to say that's not just one plant, right? And what makes it beautiful is not just that it's what blossoms it has or whatever. Like, what makes that plant beautiful is that it is in an interdependent system that includes all of these other creatures, that include every bug and bird and other animal that are part of its food web, and like ultimately includes us, right? Like, it's a teaching about seeing with new eyes that what makes all of us like beautiful and peaceful is that we coexist and are interdependent and are aware of those and are existing in a mutual network. So I just wanted to this program is extremely popular. I keep thinking, well, maybe this time the workshop won't be well attended. Maybe this time this congregation won't be into it. And they always are. This is just like the Teflon amazing program that over and over again really touches people's hearts and congregations. But I've also found it to be along the way a really powerful teaching about the kind of transformation we're trying to create when we do environmental education and nature education in our faith communities. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Joelle and Naomi. And I know that we have questions. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you both for your testimony, really, but also for your witness, everything that you've done there and started this fertilization continues to grow. And I'm so happy to see that people are listening and inspired. And Yeah, thank you so much for being here. So I know, Naomi, you already saw a couple questions that you were eager to answer, so I will hand it right over to you.
Okay, well, I have answered some that were in the
Okay.
question and answer, but I can answer some a little bit more. I did neglect to say something very important actually. I don't know why I have done that but it's a new program. So National Wildlife Federation is going to begin. We have a sort of I don't have the language on how to say this, so I'm not sure. We have like a .com where we sell plants. So it's like a business side, but the money goes back into us as a nonprofit. But we are going to be working with growers. We are working with growers all over the country now to have plants, and they are going to they have started to create like a plant bank. So for people who buy plants, a certain amount gets donated back into this plant bank, and they have committed to giving free plants. You have to pay for the shipping, but they will give free plants to congregations that are planting gardens on their property. So I have to put that into my presentation because that's a critical thing. And I will include that in the resources. So they are going to be working with us right here to be piloting a lot of it, but they've already started doing it with some congregations. And again, that will scale up over time. So this is not for the people at home. We encourage you to like do it on your grounds and do it with your members to get them to do it at home. But for doing it on your grounds, you have a way to get free plants. That's really great. And there are other institutions I've seen who have started doing that. Of course, and I do recommend you start small because it can be very overwhelming and there's all these issues of working with your lands. If you have a landscaper, we had all kinds of problems on our synagogue where they got ruined over and over, and other congregations have had that. And so it's not like, I encourage you to start small and over time remove more and more of your lawn. And of course, you might want some of your lawn for certain other reasons, like for kids playing and so on. Now, for people who want to give away the plants at your congregation grounds and you don't have a grant, there's two options. The other thing this gardenforwildlife.com is going to start doing is working with congregations and like scout troops and others, where you'll be able to buy them. If you buy these plants from them and have a fundraiser, they will give them to you at a discount, and you will be able to sell them to people to plant at home. And then you can make a little money, just like you might have done a bake sale or whatever else. So there's an option for a fundraiser. And then there's another option, which is very inexpensive, but there is a few nurseries that are starting to sell these, like I showed you, those little short plants, what they call plugs. And the landscapers have typically used them, and they're just a couple of inches, and those can be extremely cheap, $3 or $4 each. I get them at as low as $2. I get them at wholesale. And so those are very inexpensive. And if you can raise some money, you can do that. Or there's a lot of little grants also available that you could write a grant for, if you can get a grant for like $500, you would be fine. You would be able to give
Is
away.
even like Rotary Club or those kind of local gardening club, are those areas that people have been able to find some money?
We haven't tried that. Good idea. Great idea. And that's the other thing, teaming up with the master gardeners. Thank you. I just gave a talk to master gardeners in my area, and one of them already contacted me. They saw the list of congregations and they said, I live near that synagogue. Can I help them? Because they have to do volunteer hours to maintain their certification, and they have tons of expertise. So you can get some of this help for free.
And I've just heard of Master Naturalist as well. That's another whole group, right?
Right. Not as available. Master gardeners are pretty much everywhere, and they're usually through universities or extension. So I will try to see if that's another place to go. But there's a lot of right. And there are, somebody just put in the chat, the thing to look for, and we actually have on our gardenforwildlife.org site a list of local nurseries. Now, I don't know if it's comprehensive everywhere because it's a lot of work, and every state, I think, has a native plant society, and they have lists of local nurseries that specialize in native plants.
that also might be willing to give some plants away, perhaps, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if they really have the money, and I'm trying to look at
Right
the
now, usually,
legal-
right, usually it'd be nice to go support them. Can I ask one specific question that Sharon has that you might know as being part of NWF is, are there any programs working on brownfield sites that are abandoned for years? Like especially to churches or houses of prayer that don't have land per se? Are there examples of going into other places in the community?
So hold on, I got a little distracted by the question. Say
That's
that again.
okay. I kind of meandered. I imagined as I was asking the question, does NWF work for on brownfield sites as
Oh,
well?
brownfields.
But
Yeah,
I'm also thinking too, there are lots of congregations that don't have much of their own land. Are there any,
yeah.
opportunities to take these plants elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't know about the brownfields. I know that there's a big effort in the Baltimore area with vacant lots, but I don't. But brownfields is another issue. I know that there's talk of trying to use them to grow plants. Like there's a big demand, more demand than supply of native plants, and so brownfields are potentially a site, and that's also something congregations could consider doing if you want to help with job creation and teaming up with partners. Like if you have enough land, some of you don't, but if some of you do, you could rent your space to like to have a greenhouse, and they could be native plants, and you could partner with them and do that. So I think, and people are talking about seeds. There's all kinds of different ways to do it, and it's a big issue. There's also seed availability issues, problems, because it's really become a very big deal. But people are putting great references in the chat. And
yes, there.
yeah.
And the biggest question was, do we get all this stuff again? Because people are writing things fast and furious yes, it's all going to be recorded. I'm going to try to highlight and pick out some stuff to also add to a post that has a lot of these highlights. But as both Naomi and Joelle have said too, starting small, like just that feeling that people have receiving a plant rather than feeling like you have to be a gardener now, being able to be gifted this opportunity of one plant. If a community can start small. And what I noticed reading the Talamy book as well is I kept noticing that over and over again, it's the less you do, the better, right? The whole idea of, no, you don't have to pick up everything. Leave it. It's there for a reason. God put it there on purpose. That I love that constant sense of like, no, less is more. Settle down. Stop trying to clean everything up. I do appreciate that a lot of this has to do with really listening to what your land wants to do. And like you said, Naomi, how humbling it is too, to recognize you've studied wildlife your whole life, but never realized how many caterpillars one bird in their family might need. Being able to stop and listen is a very prayerful attitude that, yeah, we should be doing anyways as part of a work of faith. Less is more.
And people are, and that's where the money savings comes in over time. You'll spend less money. And so that's really good. But people are just putting in all kinds of great information in the chat, and there are great organizations. There's lots of people now doing this. Wildones.org, that somebody is putting out free templates for different regions of native plant gardens, because like, how do you design a garden? That's great. They're putting that out. We are going to start having some more things like that available. And I do urge you to go to gardenforwildlife.org and gardenforwildlife.com. There are so many garden tips, and it can also be a challenge, like, hang in there. There are issues with deer and invasives and drought. And again, landscapers mowing things over, so it may take a little bit of extra effort, but the rewards are huge, and the alternative is dreadful. I mean, frankly, this is really our way to give something back, and it can be done in all these places. And if you don't have a garden, you could team up with another congregation. You could see if they'd be willing to do it with you. You could talk to their schools doing this, businesses, and there are homes that are obviously doing it. And the other idea is you could put up containers. There's we were working with a mosque in DC, and there's these big like, 4 foot by whatever, 3 foot wooden structures that you can put up and then put the soil in, and then you could have some beautiful native plants. And that will at least, it will help. And it will also be a good demonstration. So I think that there are things that you can do. Container gardens are great.
That's a good answer, actually, to Sharon Sharon was also asking about the soil quality questions and that sort of thing. And that if you can't fix soil quality, to be able to have containers like that is a really big deal. Speaking of soil though, do you have any particular suggestions for churches looking to first restore their soil or get into composting? Is that all also on your site?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if that
If it's
is,
not,
I think that, what we're recommending to get rid of your lawn and that builds your soil is there's something called the lasagna method, where you put a bunch of mulch, and you can get that free from chipdrop.com, which basically are the arborists who take down the trees in the neighborhood, and then they chip them up, and they can't sell them. They don't want to, they give them away, and you can get a huge amount, and they put them over your lawn. And if you leave them for 6 months, they turn into compost, and they help your soil, and they kill
That's
the
national.
National.
Can you put that in the chat?
Oh, somebody said when they got it, it was full of seeds of non-native trees.
Oh,
That's
see,
not
we have
good.
the collective knowledge of the chat here. Okay.
Well, a lot of people have done that, and it has worked, but I hear what you're saying, that it
Sure,
may
it
not
depends,
be,
yeah.
shouldn't be. So that might be something you have to ask them, what the tree was. I don't know. That's a good thing. Anyway,
We do.
Yeah.
I will add a bunch of sites too about compost. We're really big. There's even a song about God being in compost that I have a link to, but there's a lot of beautiful stuff about soil quality that I'll try to add as well.
And it doesn't have to be through chip drop. You contact local arborists, like you see a truck going. I do that all the time. I chase the trucks down in my neighborhood to get them to come.
You're that lady, huh?
But they give you a huge truck, so you have to be ready for it.
Right, right.
So it's great. I be happy to. I do want to say that in North Carolina, I know there's a couple of people, but there are some grant programs, I think, through Soil Conservation Service. I know there is something so we have a local, Joelle put this note, but in our region, the local jurisdictions are giving prioritizing congregations, and my congregation was able to get up to $20,000 to put in conservation landscaping as a way to deal with that stormwater runoff. And there are similar programs in other parts of the country, and we hope to be able to put up a database. But there are programs in California, in Wisconsin, and other parts of the country also. And somebody asked about areas that are like desert, like drought. And I know there's a big effort to do xeriscaping and not use water. And so there are local incentive programs available, and I think there's going to be many more coming on. And also the EPA has a whole garden toolkit that we work with them on. And so we'll include that. They have a whole one about how to deal with stormwater and garden for that.
We do have a lot of links that we will be coalescing together and sending to everybody who registered, whether you're here at this moment or not. So I'm grateful, and the collective knowledge going on in the chat. I want to thank all of you for this.
Amazing.
Is there any particular closing words from you, Naomi, before we hand it over to Joelle?
I just want to thank you for spending the time with us, and we do hope to start a cohort virtually. So if that's something you might be interested in working with us on, definitely send me an email, and we'll do a follow-up with my contact information too. Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you so much, Naomi. It brought light into a very dark season, and I thank you so much for that. And Joelle, should I pull up the musical interlude here for you?
Yeah, well, I was going to share a reflection, and then we'll close with the music. Is that okay?
Good. I will be ready for it whenever you tell me.
So we're going to close tonight with a song by a Jewish artist named Batya Levine called Tu B'Shvat, and it's a melody for the Jewish ecological holiday of Tu B'Shvat, which begins tomorrow night at sundown. And Tu B'Shvat is timed around the first blossom times for a totally different ecosystem on the other side of the world. But for the Jewish communities like mine that celebrate Tu B'Shvat here in the United States, the holiday always comes midwinter, long before first blossoms. And instead, I've sort of embraced it as a chance to think about all the things that happen before the growth is visible. The roots that have to, you know, extend themselves farther, the sap that has to rise, the sugars that have to get sent into the carrots, or what, I don't know, what all those things that are out of our sight, but that precede, that take place in the cold and dark, that make blossoms possible later.
Mm. Mm.
and only become visible down the road. And I think about that a lot as a grassroots climate activist and someone who tries to support and cheer on those souls, determined souls trying to make change inside your churches and your congregations, and care for, to transform our communities. And that so much of that work is likewise like underground in the dark, like sometimes I think, it's so hard to write grant reports where every single picture is a picture of people sitting in folding chairs talking to each other about climate change. And it's like, how do you explain that that's, something that's like beautiful and transformative and amazing, like only happens in spring if you spend the winter having those conversations and opening people's hearts. And I always think about, I love, there's a poem by Marge Piercy that says, more than half the tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. That like really, we need to embrace for growth to happen, both like, both the kinds of like, the tangible growth that Naomi's been evoking today of native plants, but also the transformative spiritual growth of our communities towards a more sustainable world. That in both cases we need to really undertake that invisible work with the faith that it will blossom, and we will be able to see the part of the tree above ground fruit and flower in time. So I want to leave us with that belief and faith in the power that our work is having to make blossoms possible and transformation and growth possible, even when we can't see it right away. And with that, I'll sign off, and Phoebe can sound share the music.
Thank you so much for that, Joelle.
Hi
Peace to you all. Thank you so much.